Welcome to Deciphering Growth, the show that explores mental health from every angle. We bring you conversations with personal opinions, stories, and practical tips. We aim to break down the stigma and help you live your best life. So please sit back and let's dive in. Before we begin, we want to remind our listeners that this podcast represents the opinions of Tiffany Graves, Eric Stone, and the show's guests. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. Please consult a healthcare professional for any medical questions. The views and opinions expressed are our own and do not represent those of our workplaces. Listening, reading, emailing, or interacting on social media with our content does not establish a doctor-patient relationship.
All right, guys, welcome back to Deciphering Growth. We have some very, very special guests today. We're going to throw it to them and let them introduce themselves and kind of what topic we're going to cover today.
Yeah, hi, my name's Blue.
I'm Jason.
We're the directors of a documentary called Dawn Dusk, and it follows Chelli Look, a leather bag designer, during a season of grief in her life after she has lost her sister to domestic violence. And she's also launching a new collection. And the film really dives into how art kind of reflects what we go through as humans and just kind of our emotional processes. And it's also kind of about beginnings and endings in seasons of life.
That is great. Thank you guys for being here. Just because we are going to talk a little bit more detail about trauma, we just want to offer our trigger warning today that we'll be talking about a real example and case of trauma. The documentary is a little detailed, and so we'll be going over some different things. So, any of our listeners or people maybe featuring it, maybe you're coming from Jason and Blue, so you do know what the documentary is. But if you don't, that's okay. Maybe try to find a moment when you're under your window of tolerance, or maybe when you are more curious for it. But we are really excited, so just want to offer that warning for anyone that may just have that episode kind of moving forward. So, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for kind of joining us in this conversation. I know Tiff and I try to have these conversations, kind of challenging stigma and bringing other people who are challenging stigma in their own ways. So the documentary seems really interesting and focused in that way. So we're really excited to have you. So Tiffany, I know you always prepare really good questions and I steal them. So I don't want to start off like that. I'm trying to churn a new leaf in the fall. Oh man, the puns are bad. So Tiffany, I'm going to throw it to you to get to ask the questions that you prepared.
You're already rushing us into fall. Not that I'm
I
going to complain because summer's been a
Pumpkin
little...
spice lattes come out very soon, Tiffany. So that's
That's
not why we're
fine.
here, but it
I'm
comes
ready
out
for
very
some...
soon.
I'm ready for some not disgusting weather. So Dawn Dusk doesn't focus on the act of violence itself in particularly,
Yeah.
but rather on, I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize in advance, Chelli's?
Chelli, yeah.
Path through grief, creativity, and advocacy. And we're curious as like what informed that storytelling choice for you guys?
Yeah, I can go, yeah. I think as filmmakers and as consumers of media, I think as we all are, we're pretty inundated in sort of this, I don't know, for this like love of true crime, this sort of uh, uh, focus on, the act of violence and sort of the what and the why. And um, we're particularly drawn to that kind of thing, and we often found that the story ended, with quote unquote justice being served, meaning like the person who committed the act, like is in jail and gets what they deserve. But with Shelley's story, what drew us to her and what we wanted to try to do with this film was to uh, tell a story that I think is not really told very often, if at all, which is how do you persist after? How do you grieve? How do you heal? What happens to those who remain, who are left behind, the secondary victims, and what is that process like? And in the case of Chelli, we get to see that really through the outpouring of her work as an artist and a leather bag designer, and that's kind of just felt like a natural fit for a film, and we wanted to explore that with her. And I think that's an important story that I would love to have more open and frank conversations with people about, with what grief and healing and forgiveness look like.
And especially like what you mentioned of, a lot of times the story ends with like the person like getting what they deserve, quote unquote.
Quote
And
unquote.
in Shelley's story, she is very open and talks very vulnerably about, grieving the loss of not only her sister but her brother-in-law as well, and grieving that relationship, and just diving into, that there's no joy in seeing him put into prison, that it's it's what needed to happen, obviously, but that she's not like, there's no like happiness in that there's still a loss. And so like grieving, that the grief extends into different areas. And so I think really just naturally, like, to answer your question, the story, that was just a story that was unfolding, was just that we saw her processing through those things. And she had, the time that we came into her life, it had been about 10 years since the murder had happened. But during those 10 years, the trial took place, and there was kind of an extended period of difficulty and
Waiting,
waiting, and
pause.
that was happening, and it put her in a very dark place. And so we were coming in on a time where she was, there's the cat. We were
We
coming in
love
on
cats. All good.
we were coming in on a time where she had kind of begun to turn a corner, or had turned a corner, coming out of that darkness, and was coming into more of a lighter place. And we came in kind of while she was figuring out what that time of her life was, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I love the rawness of what you guys are talking about, because often it isn't this movie scene ending. And it's interesting, as you guys talk about, you describe it so well, as I'm sure you know, that like grief is not this set endpoint journey, chapters, clean cut transition points and destinations. And so um, that's really beautiful. Just hearing you guys talk about it. One thing I'm curious, you kind of talked a little about the visuals of kind of trying to capture sorrow and light. And so I'm just curious, how did you guys kind of navigate the emotional tone to kind of avoid re-traumatizing people watching it, but also honoring the truth of maybe Shelley's experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that um, you get to see, for Shelley, Dawn and Dusk, that's the name of the movie. That's the name of her collection of her bags in the movie that she's launching. Uh, are these the Dawn and Dusk that is literally her like form of inspiration, but it's very abstract. She's not actually making, I don't know, a handbag that looks like a literal sunrise. I'm not even sure how you would do that. Uh, so as we began filming with her, we started to sort of see these layers that were going on in her creative process and in her like own personal journey, that I don't even know if she really had words for. And eventually we took her out to the lakeside, and it was sunrise, and we said, you're always talking about how you're inspired by light. We're going to talk about light. We're going to talk about this and just get into it. And what was sort of revealed is that uh, Dawn and Dusk for her were these really faithful things during like, a really unstable time. And so she found herself naturally going to watch the sunrise and the sunset because they're going to happen every day. They're a source of beauty, and there wasn't a lot of beauty or stability or predictability around her
Hmm.
after she lost Megan. Um, and she talks about how like she's feeling these bouts of anger and rage, and how she's worried about what, if this person is capable that I knew of something so horrible, what are other people capable of? What am I capable of? There's a lot of instability and unpredictability in her life, and Dawn and Dusk were like truly faithful things. And so like light as a metaphor, that dawn is coming as a metaphor, as cliche as it is truly like so rooted in Shelley's healing process and in her
Hmm.
design process. And so it was only natural for us to sort of start trying to capture those visuals, those elements, and trying to put them into the movie. And I think that um, while you mentioned like without trying to quote re-traumatize, I think that uh, my hope is that what we did was actually something that may be challenging to a viewer when she talks about forgiveness, or talks about being free from the cycle of revenge, talks about her grief, that you actually are seeing someone in the process that you maybe don't get to see, that's normally behind closed doors, and that you're actually encouraged, and that you can be empathetic by seeing this person on this journey. That's like my hope with these, with our
Hmm.
approach to the film. We don't really get into the details of what happened to Megan. We don't get into the details of the trial. It's not about that. That's essentially the inciting incident of the story that we're telling,
Hmm.
which is an artist who is going through a process and is outpouring it through her work. And I think that that is staying focused on that, and knowing that that was the story. It took us a while to get there as filmmakers as well, because documentaries kind of unfold unpredictably. Uh, but once we kind of knew what the story really was and could hone in on it, that's the story we could focus on. And I think that that's an encouraging story.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, like the connection that comes to me as you guys are talking about is just how like that dawn to dusk can like resonate with Shelley's story, and that like kind of like closing and opening of new things and old things. Um, as you were talking about like Shelley's emotional journey, what was it like for you guys to emotionally follow Shelley in such an intimate and vulnerable chapters
Mm.
over those
Hmm.
years?
It was interesting. Like, as this is our first feature documentary, and it's Shelley likes to joke that she had 3 years of free therapy with us, because we just we just listened. We just listened, and in a way witnessed this chapter of her life. And um, as filmmakers, that was really interesting to do, because you are kind of holding this space for this person, um, and then you kind of have to, then as a filmmaker, you're then not just like leaving that space, you're taking it and then you're creating something from it. So it's not like you can just walk away and forget about it.
Yeah.
Um, so it was, but it was a very humbling and kind of sacred space in a
Yeah.
way that we were in with her. But there were times, when we did the interview where she kind of told us more about what happened to her sister, and by then that was like interview number 3 or something, and we had talked about so many different things, and kind of had really eased into
Mhm.
this vulnerable place together, and this kind of place of trust together. And so by then, I think she was feeling more comfortable, we were feeling more comfortable. But I think even then there's still nervousness, and um, it's still a difficult thing to
Mm.
to share. Even in this is like a little little insider tidbit, even in post-production, we actually, our sound mixer actually had to mix out the sound of her heartbeat because her heart was beating so fast during the
Wow.
interview, which, it's totally understandable.
Yeah.
Um, and so by the time we got into that kind of very vulnerable interview, we had established that trust between us, and so it was a more comfortable space, I think, for all of us. But even after that, I think we went home and took some decompressed time because it is a difficult thing to hear about. But then also getting to witness and hear about all the light that she was experiencing as well when
Mhm.
we went on to talk about, the place that she's sitting in now, the place of feeling this darkness and this weight lifted off of her, that was also, very
Yeah.
encouraging to us, and really like one of the our motivations for making this film.
Mhm.
And just feeling like other people need to see that uh, that this darkness will pass. And I think there's other people out there who would maybe be encouraged by this story and feel like this story would be powerful.
I'm really struck by something you said, Blue, that like you were trying to be like just a witness. And so one of the things that's kind of interesting is sometimes we talk about therapy as being like an empathetic witness, just existing, being there. So when you were joking about the free therapy for a few years, I was like, I mean, there's a lot of ways to heal. So I think like, maybe participating in this project or sharing the stories, giving that pain a purpose. So man, so thanks for saying. Just there's a lot of overlap, so I'm really glad and grateful you guys are here. I hear a lot of shared values, and maybe it's coming from different angles, but finding similar
Mhm.
conclusions and takeaways. So that's really beautiful. Um, this is kind of a personal question, so I want to give you guys a second. I know we sent you a few of these so you had time, but did Shelley's journey ever mirror or affect your own kind of reflections on loss or grief or advocacy? So I just want to make sure you guys feel like you have a second.
Yeah.
That's a big question. If you asked me that, I would have to take a breath and sip my coffee for a good minute to answer that one.
Well, I think that, we've obviously made this film, so we spent a lot of time thinking about some of those things.
Hmm.
So I think we can get into it. Uh,
Great, great.
I think I learned a lot about uh, grief, and I personally kind of grew up in a family that um, the only negative emotion that really existed was anger. There was no sadness. There was no, like, if you were grieving something, you just kind of had to, you know, get over it, move on. So I wasn't very comfortable holding space for grief. I was kind of like, get over it. That's who I was. And this film really, you know, you mentioned like empathy or a second
Hmm.
ago. Like film is a lens for empathy, right? Like it's a lens
Mm,
to be able to put yourself into the shoes of someone that you may not relate to, you an experience that maybe you might not ever have. You get to walk into a film for an hour and a half to 2 hours and be sort of safely in someone's shoes, and then be able to sort of safely exit those shoes. But hopefully you come out on the other side with like a deeper understanding and empathetic understanding of that experience or that person. And for me, I got to watch someone go through an authentic grief process that I don't think that I felt um, like I was comfortable doing myself. And
Hmm.
grief is very nonlinear. It doesn't make sense. It's back and forth. Our movies reflected that actually. The movie's told in a nonlinear format. So the first hour especially is edited not chronologically but thematically. So we're moving in and out of time, and the chronology doesn't really matter because the healing and the grief process is not in a chronological order. Like you said, it's
Hmm.
not a point A to a point B. It's
mm,
it's 2 steps forward, 10 steps back, 10 steps forward. I'm healed. Oh, actually, I'm not. So it's a lot, and our movie tries to reflect that in even the editing, even in the craft of filmmaking itself. We tried to reflect all of what we were seeing in front of us back into the craft. Um, but on a personal level, it also just showed me how to
Mhm.
better hold space for those kinds of experiences and emotions. So
Yeah.
that's it was powerful, and I'm still getting used to it.
Yeah, I think for me, I th during the filming, I was kind of also processing through some um, forgiving someone in my life uh, who it felt difficult to forgive, and my situation was a little different than Shelley's, obviously, because it wasn't as uh, weighty
Yeah.
as something that she was processing through. Um, and in my situation, it was still open to relationship, whereas with um, Shelley, her walking through forgiveness was more about
For
being
herself.
being free from was being free from um, just that prison of revenge, as she described it. And so I think for me, it was encouraging to see an example of someone who was walking through um, forgiving someone and like releasing that bitterness uh, in a practical way and like almost on a daily
Hmm.
basis. Near the end of the film, we ask her, do you still pray for Brian, her brother-in-law? And she shares about how, yeah, she prays for him every day because she has to, because that's the only thing that keeps her heart soft. And so I think for me, just it was an encouraging example and a challenging example to see of someone walking through that. And not only, I think it was also helpful for me just to hear Shelley's processing and her story about what forgiveness like actually like meant for her, and how it was almost an act of like loving herself. And in her case, it was a spiritual journey for her, and kind of something where she was being invited into like loving herself in this like more powerful way. And I think that was I think for me that was encouraging, because um I think I kind of tend to have this idea sometimes that oh, I just have to lay my I kind of tend to be a doormat in certain situations. But I think just a reminder of loving yourself, and that loving yourself is going to help you love others well. That was kind of what I took away from some of her experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great answers, guys. I thought you did great. I don't know if I should score it, but I thought you guys did great. And also, I'm sitting here just pondering, and I see you doing that too, Tiffany.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how sometimes we can process and learn and experience new things through other people's like healing journeys, and what a marvelous privilege that can be to have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess like continuing on that line, like what did you guys learn about trauma, resilience, or just storytelling from like living and experiencing Shelley's story through the film?
I could share about just it being a documentary and how that was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I think one big thing that we learned was really just how to be documentarians and how to tell a real person's story, because we come from more of a narrative background where we're writing and creating the characters, and then you're directing the actors to kind of become these characters. And there's a lot of, you have a lot of like control as a director. And in documentary, there is definitely a lack of, a releasing of control in the process, because you are just following along. And I think a big thing that we learned was how to be observers, and then um, how to share those observations in a way where it wasn't necessarily like putting our bias on. I mean, I'm sure, it will no matter what.
Yeah.
But like it wasn't like us trying, saying like say this or do this. Like we weren't directing her to do something, but rather we were sharing observations of, oh, we've noticed this, or why are you so inspired by sunrise and sunset, and digging deeper into some of those things. And I think that we learned a lot about how to listen and how to observe. And I think that that has also made us stronger filmmakers, because we've taken some of those skills into the rest of our filmmaking, into just different areas where, sometimes it's good to give space to the other creatives and the other collaborators around you, and to like let them fill in the gaps. Like in a similar way, in this documentary, we were just following along with Chelli and almost uplifting her as she was going along, rather than trying to direct her where to go. So yeah, I think that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, man, I really just beautiful answers. I'm really struck by how great of a fit you guys are to tell this story, and just the respect you have for it, and the just respect, reverence, just very respectful. I mean, it kind of just it's really present in everything you guys have shared, even before we started recording, and then even just now as we're talking. So that's just really encouraging to see. Something that's kind of interesting, and I know you guys may not be able to share some of these things, but after screenings, you guys have talked about people kind of coming up afterwards and sharing stories. As much as you guys are able to share or comfortable sharing, were there any moments that maybe have deeply moved you or surprised you in some of those responses you've been getting?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did early on in the process was not early, actually pretty late in the process. We actually did some test screenings even before the movie was finished. And excuse me.
Oh,
And uh, before the movie was finished, we did these test screenings, and we um, spoke to 30 or so trusted voices that had got a glimpse of the movie. The movie was actually like 10 minutes longer at that point. There were some things that were in a different order. There was temporary music in at that point, but we needed to make sure that the story we were telling made sense and get eyes on it. One of our friends, in his feedback session with us, um, he kind of really like helped us nail the he said this movie is a movie for artists. And uh, I think that we knew that, but I don't think that we had heard it out loud. And it really was like, yeah, you're right. Like this movie is a movie for artists or anyone who identifies in a creative way. And it was like very cool to see like somebody putting words on this process and this project that like even like we hadn't been able to sort of delineate yet. So that was a really cool moment. There was another moment at our festival premiere where uh, a gentleman came up to me and said, when can I get a copy of this? Because I think that my sister's really going through something, and I think that this would like just be potentially instrumental in helping her voice and process some of the things that she was going through. And that was another really, it was like the first, that was like our world premiere, festival premiere, and we were kind of on the high of getting the movie out. But then to sort of be reminded of like, oh, this is why we like made this is for people like this to be experiencing, you know, moments like that, and to feel like they can see how it can be used and how it can impact the people around them. So those were two really cool moments.
There's another early one
Yeah,
that I
I don't
think,
remember.
yeah. So one of our other test screeners that we had, and I won't share too many details because I don't want to like draw too much attention, but they had lost their mom
Oh
kind of
yes, that's
recently, and uh, they um, they had lost their mom in there was a car accident, and there was someone responsible in the car accident, and uh, they were really kind of, after watching our film, shared with us that it was both challenging and encouraging to um, to watch the film and hear Shelley's story as they were kind of processing their own feelings towards this person, this other person that was involved in the car accident that had unfortunately caused, the death of their mother. And so that was really like, yeah, really emotional to hear.
yeah.
Um, and actually, one of the things that we ended up doing is we ended up commissioning a handful of artists that we that just were connected to in various ways to create art in response to the film, because we saw that the film was, creating some responses in people, and so we wanted to kind of, and the film is all about processing emotions through art, so we kind of wanted to create something to kind of go along with the film in that way. So we commissioned a handful of artists to create art in response to the film, and we've actually created a little booklet that goes along with the film, and there's poetry and art in there alongside screenshots from the movie. And there's also like a blank space in the middle where you can do your own processing and own creating too. Um, so those are actually going to be up on our website soon to for people if they're interested in them. But yeah, so I think so then seeing some of the art that came out of that and seeing people's responses through art and some really beautiful poetry that was shared, and really just emotional and personal, that was really, really emotional
Yeah,
to see as
it
well.
was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I was so sorry, Tiffany. It sounds like you.
No, you're good. You're good. It just wraps up perfectly the next question in terms about like where you're hoping like people will feel or like call to action. And it sounds like kind of like that creative outlet of being able to express like grief in a way that makes sense for different types of people. I guess keeping in line with kind of like expressing grief and like different ways of doing that. Like in your view, how does this story reflect like a wider cultural conversation around domestic violence, healing, legacy, and those types of things?
Hmm.
That's a very good question.
Hmm.
I think that the movie, um, like I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, really um, touches on maybe a lesser told, a lesser shared part of the process. Um, in the movie, we witness Shelley giving a keynote speech at a fundraiser at the domestic violence shelter that she volunteers and donates to, and volunteers at. And in the speech, she's talking about this forgiveness process, and she is doing that in front of people who have just gone through the shelters program, like who um, were victims of domestic violence themselves, and families who had lost people to domestic violence as well. And I think that that is an incredibly brave thing to do, to sort of look at people who have experienced something so horrific and say, you know, like we gotta forgive, we gotta do this to heal well. And um, that's not the conversation that I think we're used to having in terms of like a wider cultural and society level. We're not doing that well. We're not having those conversations like very comfortably. And I think that I hope that the film helps people have those kinds of conversations better and think about them better and be more open to some of those ideas.
Yeah, I would say that we don't necessarily have a clear and defined call to action in our film. I think there's a lot of different things that you can take away from it. I think what we practiced in the making of it was not necessarily trying to make something with a specific purpose, but rather we saw a story that we felt held power and that was encouraging to us and that we saw was of impacting other people, and that frankly we also just thought was really interesting and
Hmm.
beautiful as filmmakers, and we just wanted to share that, put it to a wider audience. And so that is really kind of our intention with this movie. Not everyone is going to love this movie, and that's okay. Some people, it might not resonate with them, but I think for those that it has, it's been really really special and really wonderful.
Wow. I just love it's just very holistic, this conversation. And just I like was watching the trailers and like reading about it. I was like, I'm really looking forward to watch this. Like I wish I had time to watch it before, but now I'm just after this, I'm like, man, I can't wait to watch this. It just seems so encouraging and challenging, but also like, we need more media like this, to be really
Yeah.
honest. So I'm just really excited that you guys reached out and brought the documentary to our awareness, and I'm just excited to kind of tell some of my colleagues about it. Um, kind of maybe on the lighter end of some of the questions that we kind of put you guys in a job interview and just kind of ask all the hard questions. But what does it mean for maybe both of you guys to have these stories being told that kind of hold space for grief, but also, like you guys have talked about all in this conversation, offer hope? What does that kind of mean for you guys? Kind of telling the maybe duality. In therapy, we would kind of call it the complicated emotions, where there's like two within one, and it's not like super easy to pull out. I don't know, on your guys' end, like what does that kind of mean to tell those kind of stories?
Mm.
You want to go?
Yeah, sure,
Go
I
ahead.
can I
Yeah,
can go on
go
with
for
you.
it.
Okay. um I think that we are both, not always, but we tend to be drawn to stories of redemption. And I think that redemption is something that we all experience in one way or another in our lives, whether it's to a greater degree or to a more minor degree. And when I think about what redemption is, it's really, you know, something has to be redeemed, like in order to have beauty come from it. And like, there's a part in the film where Shelley's husband, Dave, is talking about how, this isn't a story of something happening and then like good coming from it, but rather it's about um, that when light comes into darkness, it can no longer be
Mm.
dark. And I think that that is that is what I think of when I think of the word redemption. Is I think of the light coming into something that is so dark, and it can no longer be dark. When you turn on a light, there's no more darkness,
Yeah.
basically. And so there's a kind of beauty in that is a um, almost a difficult beauty, or almost like a
Mm,
bittersweet kind of beauty, because it is a a the beauty of hope, which you can't. It's like you can't have hope without needing to hope in some way. You can't. It's like you can't have that without having something to need hope for, and
mm,
there's that kind of juxtaposition, and so um, I think that the reminder of hope is something that, we all, yeah, we all need, especially right now in life.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I feel like I'm rambling.
no, no.
Yeah.
That's good.
Um,
You nailed it.
but yeah, I think just to summarize, like, um, so I think in telling this story, we saw those qualities, and that is why we wanted to share it, was because we saw those qualities and thought that this is powerful, and this is something that I think others need to see. Yeah, it's a really interesting concept, because it's like we're not, it's not like we're saying something bad always has to happen in order to have the good. That's definitely not what this is about, but rather it's about that there is there is light coming even through darkness. There is like goodness to be had, a new dawn to be had, even when things feel so dark around you.
Wow. No, I just want to echo what Jason said. I think that's a great answer. So no, I don't think that was rambling at all. These are really profound questions. So next I'm going to ask you what I need to do with my life. No, I'm just kidding. But no, they're very existential. I mean, it's like I don't think you really can give these the simple one off. Or I love when you guys
Mhm.
said, "What's the takeaway theme or message?" It's like there really isn't one, because it hits everyone differently and lots of different things are going on.
Yeah.
So I just
Mhm.
love that. So I don't want to steal your answer, Jason. Sorry if I did.
Oh no, I was gonna just talk about redemption too. I don't have anything to add to that at all.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Tiffany, I've stolen a few questions, just a few, as per usual. That's kind of the tax I pay. That, and you can buy me coffee later. No, but do you want to close us with the last question we have prepared for today?
Yeah, so our last question, oh, we say last question. But I guess like ultimately, what kind of legacy do you feel like like you want to leave based on what the film is asking? And like how would you guys answer that personally?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a challenging question that Shelley asks everybody at the speech that I mentioned earlier. She says, "What kind of legacy do you want to leave?" Uh, I, the concept of legacy is hard, I think.
Mhm. Mhm.
I, I mean, from very personally, I almost think the concept of legacy is like almost, this is going to sound strange, but almost materialistic. Like I
Mm.
don't know if I want to leave like anything. But I think that uh, if I zoom out a little bit and I take the word legacy for what I think people expect it to mean, it's like um, I think that I just want to take like one step every day that towards like a positive trajectory, so that like what what I'm leaving behind is having if somebody encounters it, which is like I think that's the part that I think that legacy feels assumptory often to me, like like someone's going to encounter like what I've left behind, and I don't know if anyone will. And I don't want to assume
Mm,
anyone will, and I don't always really want to desire for someone to encounter necessarily what I've left behind. But if someone does encounter it, um, I think that I want them to, um, you know, experience any of the things that we've talked about today, like experience um, some hope or some understanding of something on some level that maybe they needed, or maybe they got some encouragement by, or maybe they got to see
Mm.
somebody else walking a similar path and that they didn't think that they thought they were alone, or whatever that is. And that's like something we want to do with this movie, is that if you do encounter this movie, we want you to, there's a lot of places you can see yourself in this movie. it's obviously there's entertainment value. You get to watch Chelli work. You get to watch, if you're a fashion fan, you get to watch bags get be designed. If you're a creative person, you get to see an artist at work. If you don't identify as any of those things, you can still watch it and be in moved by the process that you're seeing on screen. Those are things that we hope, and we hope that if you do encounter it, you get to
Mhm.
uh, experience. But I think for me, um, I'm just like maybe trying to, I guess, leave a legacy through my work and through, my everyday interactions in my community and with my friends and in my life, trying to like, if you happen to walk in my footsteps for a moment, that you aren't off put. You're kind of like, oh, these aren't bad footsteps.
I think for me, it's one of the other questions that Shelley asks in that speech, kind of alongside what kind of legacy will you leave? She also asks, will you choose to love? And I think that that's the one for me that I think that's like the legacy that I want to leave is did I choose to love, those around me? Did I choose to love myself well? And like I mentioned earlier, loving yourself well helps you love other people well. And I think that that's the legacy I want to leave behind is just kind of that pay it forward kind of loving each other, loving yourself, loving the people around you so that they can better love the people around them and so on and so forth, and hope that by extending that kind of love and graciousness that that you are leaving a legacy of loving each other and taking care of each other and um in whatever way that might be.
I mean, we've had some great people come on and give us great just content and thoughts and lessons, but I'm really struck by how holistic this conversation has been. I just like as I'm sitting here, I mean, it obviously the themes of like the documentary, but just I mean how I can hear your guys' values and your connection and just the holisticness. So I just want to say thank you guys for just sharing. I know you guys are very busy talking with so many different people right now, talking about the work you guys are doing. So thank you for just being here. And Tiffany, I know you have some plugs you wanted to make for them, and I didn't want to steal it from you.
Oh no, you're totally fine. I also want to thank you guys for being here, and for sharing such oh, I can't even, I lost the word.
Okay.
Um, undershadowed stories of what people go through, both experience it from like personal experience and like experiencing it from the outside. I don't feel like we have enough of that conversation going, and we appreciate the work that you're doing. So we just want to thank you for that. Thank you for being here. And then if you guys want to give a plug to your website and things of that nature, that would be awesome. We are going to try and post your website, and this video will be on our Patreon. It will be on our YouTube as well. And once we get that posted, we will happily share that everywhere for you guys.
Great. Yeah. If you want to check out the film, you can stream it for free with ads on Tubi. You can rent or purchase it on Amazon. It's also on the Roku channel, on Fossum. It's going to be available on, I think, some cable channels on
Mhm.
demand and a couple others. You can find all that information on our website, which is Dawn Dusk Film. There's a big button that says where to watch, and you can click on that, and then it'll take you right to the different platforms, your platform of choice. And then our socials, we're Dawn Dusk Film pretty much across the board on our socials, and we'd love for you to send us a message
Yeah.
and tell us what you think of the movie.
Yeah, we reach out if you've watched it and want to chat more.
I'll just throw out one more plug for them. There is not enough meaningful representation of mental health stories and journeys. And so I just want to encourage anyone who is listening to this to please stream it wherever you can. That's how people are able to continue to make work like this. So I just want to thank you guys. It is a very special thing to have a story as well told as this one, but also not be exploitative of the person the story is being told about. So just want to give you guys credit for that, because that's usually some of the frustrations, and we don't have enough time for that. So I just want to say thank you guys for the great work you're doing, and I'm sure you will continue to do. So everyone, please stream. I don't normally plug the streaming, but I was like, please stream. But that's the homework. Just stream the documentary. Okay, Tiffany, I'm tagging you back.
Okay. Well, with that, we will wrap up today, guys. It was wonderful having you here, and to all of our listeners, thank you for listening. And until next time, keep growing.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Deciphering Growth. We hope you found our conversation helpful and insightful. Subscribe to our podcast for more episodes and check out our Patreon for more content. Don't hesitate to contact us on social media if you have any questions or comments. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing.